Hello everyone, today we make with great delight our yearly coin gift review. You know that we have a great donor among us. I also take the chance to thank all those who over the years wanted to donate in different ways. It turns out on PayPal I can't use the chat, so I can't reply to you individually because I don't know who you are, right? So, but there is a habit now, a systematic flow, and I take at heart, especially of course, this one more than else, because it's history. I always tell you, I'm not interested in money per se, except these are coins, so it's kind of a bit of a joke. But I mean, as you know, that I care about history way more the most, right? And I must say, from first gifts I've gotten habituated to something that the first time from this donor I had never experienced. That is to say, having properly in my hands an ancient or sometimes also medieval coin. In my codicology classes, yes, I handled medieval manuscripts. I had those kind of experiences, but I was also and still am grotesquely ignorant about the history of coinage in the first place. Yet this experience has provided me with an important insight, and I am way more sensitive to the type of source that, frankly, from especially an iconographic point of view, is astounding, right? And this donor has increased, right, both the quantity and the quality of these gifts that, as you can see, also mostly uploaded from in the historian playlists, are always fantastic, in my opinion. I hope that you're also interested, because yeah, I know coins may seem initially, if you're habituated just to battlefields of bloodshed and so on, to at least a secondary aspect, but it's really not. First of all, you get a lot of, again, iconographic evidence from coins, but it's rather the meaning. It's very often this, in fact, importantly conceptualized ideological theory, right, that you can draw from the symbolism. Naturally, the art too is quite revealing. I'm not an art historian, but definitely you can appreciate lots of things, as we will see now, because we will just span from ancient to medieval times. And I always illustrate these gifts that, again, I thank enormously the person, the friend, that provides them to me. And I also hope, as always, not to say BS, because I'm not an expert, but I document a little bit these coins very simply, right? Nothing more than even amatorial is a big word for the astonishingly low level of competence, but still something it can be useful, because the donor is also, of course, he started watching my videos and he got interested with all the especially I presume, these history of religious meaning behind the symbolism behind this coin. He told me, well, you know what, listening to your videos, I understood much better, given that I collect these coins, the symbolism behind them, and it's more interesting, definitely. And I agree, right? Like the other way around. So history always comes with putting together what you know. Sometimes we looked at coins, we said, what about this? What about the chronological? Sometimes there are mistakes also in the classifications. We sorted that out together and so on. So every year I receive this gift, and I'm very, very glad about that. So we start with this display. You see, in the title I started inserting just, I spoiled you the origins of the coins, but of course the details are a bit more relevant. So here we have a Carthaginian coin from a Sardinian mint dating to essentially between 300 to 264 BC. We are practically during the same years of Pyrrhus' invasion of Sicily, when essentially the Hellenic city-states asked for help against the Carthaginians, and the Epirot king invaded the island. I say this because he conquered as far as the westernmost corner of of the island, Eryx, where there was a temple to Tanit, that is the goddess represented on the coin. So the Great Mother, right? The symbol of one of the wives of Baal Ammon, but also one of the symbols of Carthage herself. The temple in Eryx is important because when the Romans conquered Sicily, it would remain, but they changed it into the one of Venus Ercinia, right? So in this, that happened, of course, during the First Punic War. So it was time for a gradual passage. But you know that when the Romans destroyed Carthage, the concept of essentially reaffirming the Uranian Apollonian virility over the great Pelasgian female deity, right, of the subjected peoples was quite deeply ideological, and that's fundamentally the reversal that Rome carries out in the Mediterranean. Tanit would be the same, the Carthaginian version of the Semitic Astarte. That is also mentioned in the Bible, by the way, as, you know, this terribly powerful mother goddess that the Jews themselves had to be wary of, because it would have distracted them from the only God. And definitely she embodies that degree of feminine chthonic power that the Romans were clashing, that is present also in the Aeneas, as far as Aeneas, in fact, seduces Dido with the queen of Carthage, and that in many ways she embodies this, gynecocratic dimension that the Romans eventually were to fight against the power of during the Punic Wars with great danger, as you realize, and it embodies the darkest, the obscure, in fact, the night forces, as opposed to the solar ones. And it's beautiful, in my opinion, to interpret it like that. So to get quite brutally to the data, we're talking about again a Sardinian mint that Carthaginians had in the island, and it weighs around 4.6 grams. It has a diameter of essentially almost 2 centimeters. It's in bronze, and as you can see, it has on the obverse the head of Tanit, right, left, wearing barley wreath that was naturally a Demetrian agricultural symbol of fertility, and she wears also triple pendant earring and a wire necklace. On the reverse, you instead have an horse's head with the Phoenician letter A before it. The horse figures prominently in Punic symbolism. The horse was a sacred animal to the saint Tanit that mixes, some Uranian elements to the chthonic ones as well, as it was normal, right? We should make a bit of Phoenician mythology there to see the role actually female deities have even in the solar religion, right? That speak of still an element of subordination, or at least to a degree, also of the Uranian gods. And the horse, of course, being a hybrid, just like in the Hellenic mythology, it's a very bloody chthonic animal, literally coming from the guts of the earth. It's also sacred to Poseidon, for example, the sea, the other importantly chthonic dimension you find in Phoenician mythology, and think about how important the sea was for a maritime empire like the Carthaginian one. But it's also Uranian. It's the winged Pegasus. It brings the warrior to heaven. And as you know, the Carthaginians had actually pretty darn good cavalry. And we're not talking just about the various auxilia that they could recruit from the surrounding peoples, especially of the North African hinterland, But I'm talking properly about the magnificent mounts that were bred in the massive Carthaginian latifunda, and that could provide the citizen cavalry made up essentially of noblemen, at least in the backbone of, also with remarkable numbers, but also important quality, famously enough, as you can find in Carthaginian warfare. Perhaps we should make other videos next to the Carthaginian army organization one that I made. That is also, however, interesting regarding that, because there are large numbers. As you know, Carthaginians had war chariots even up to the late 4th century BC, but we'll see this at other points. Right, so this is definitely amazing. The second coin dates to 336 BC, Kingdom of Macedon. It's a coin of Philip II, father of Alexander III. The coin design was personally selected by the monarch. Right, this is a victory meant to celebrate in part the establishment of Macedonian rule over Greece after the victory of Chaeronea in 338, after which Philip became ruler of all Hellas, as he had defeated the Athenians and their Boeotian and other allies in the battle. Thus, the symbology of the coin design is quite meaningful. We have on the obverse the diademed head of Apollo, right? And this already hints at the beginning of the new golden age, right? Of Apollo divinely crowned to rule as the new youth, right? And on the reverse, we have the writing Filippo, and it's minimal here in the proportion we explained now, a nude young male rider on horse. There is a theta below it. These, as far as I understand, if I remember correctly, are some marks relative to the mint, just like we have seen for the Phoenician letter in on the Carthaginian coin. The meaning here attached, you can't even properly see well the rider, because it's meant to be an infant. So it's the idea of the literally of the rejuvenation of the age of the new hero, like Apollo himself, but in the same symbology of of birth, of revival, that essentially the same Christianity has adopted per se, and that is also of course connected with Apollo by Virgil in the Augustan era, the affirmation of the new ruler. And the symbology is also more personal to Philip, because here, first of all, we see a huge horse. The first time, even though I have a good sight still, I couldn't see the kid on horseback, because the horse, as you can see, is huge. This may, of course, want to symbolize, also the strength of the horse, that is not just a particular one, but it has to do also with properly the fact that the figure on it is an infant, right? And albeit the legend says Filippo, in fact, we have to consider that the young Alexander, as you know, had distinguished himself at the Battle of Chaeronea, charging straight, by the way, into the Theban phalanx, in the Theban legion, and achieving a clamorous success with this dramatic punching force, in fact, of the Macedonian heavy cavalry. As you know, it was the first exploit of Alexander. And this horse is meant, at least we think, to represent likely Philip II's personal horse, right, that had won a race in the Olympic Games in 356 BC, which was, incidentally, the same year in which Alexander, the future Alexander III, the Great, the Megas, was born, right? So this was a way to affirm also ideologically the essentially the rebirth of the Golden Age through the Macedonian monarchic dynasty, right? A new age of rule over the world, over the same Hellas as the center of the world from essentially an Hellenic perspective, as Macedon fundamentally become Hellenic, at least in the full ideal way, and that had this new ruler, right, that could also ensure a continuity of the same race, right, which was naturally a divine one. And the horse was crucial in this because, of course, it was the horse of the heroes, the best horse of the world, because it had won a race in the Olympic Games. And we made a video about not actually Macedonian cavalry yet. We made something about Alexander's panoply, etc., more about Macedonian warfare, also the Antagonids later on. But we made a video, if I'm not wrong, on Thessalian cavalry that illustrates also the Paeonians, the Macedonians, the Boeotians. At Chaeronea there wasn't seemingly the famed Boeotian cavalry, but you know how important the mounted arm was for the Macedons, and that's how they had also won just a couple of years before this coin was struck, the great victory over the Greeks. This is also a beautiful bronze coin, and it tells you how strongly Apollonian the entire Macedonian symbology really was. I also made a video, in fact, about essentially the Macedonian shield patterns during actually the Hellenistic era. Now we will expand actually a little bit on it, with this essentially globular symbolism, this solar one, this starred one, right, that was crucial to them as properly deified heroes in the firmament, in the Imperium. And here the Apollonian symbology is quite self-eloquent and evident. Continuing with Hellenism, our third coin is a Seleucid one, dating to between the 268 and 261 BC, right, and being struck, in fact, under the reign of Antiochus I Soter, right. It's interesting that we talk about this, and the donor didn't know because I made videos later, just after, in fact, the one on the Skordisky, because Antiochus I was called Soter, so the savior, naturally in that kind of salvific transfigurational traditional meaning, after he had crushed the Celts that had invaded Anatolia, for which he had also employed some elephants. And this is what, interestingly enough, this coin celebrates and at least represents, as far as these elephants had been important for the success of the Seleucid forces just in those years. These were Indian elephants that, as you know, the Seleucids could access from their eastern allies slash neighbors slash, in some cases, even vassals, right? Even though the Indians had probably another opinion of that. And having crushed the Gallic threat, the sovereign was given with this name. So part of those Skordisky that we saw recently were probably also some veterans that had essentially withdrawn from Anatolia on that occasion, and or, like, of course, with very mixed backgrounds. Some of them had stayed in Anatolia, as you know. Others would go even back to Central Europe. Some would stay on the Danube as well. The mint is Antioch, right, of Syria. And you can see here in the legend Basileus Antiochou, I see the horned elephant standing. There is a theta also here below, and it weighs 6.2 grams. It's 2 centimeters in diameter. And I was also forgetting the beautiful anchor that, as you know, accompanied the Seleucid symbolism from exactly Antiochus I onwards. We don't know exactly why, though. There is many legends actually. The symbol of strength, of foundation that the anchor embodies was also existing before the Alexandrian conquest in the area in some philosophical religious currents, but it seems that Antiochus introduced it either because he was a Navarchus under Ptolemy, so symbolizing actually his former role of naval commander, and or the idea that he stumbled into an anchor in the desert, so actually showing also to the same Ptolemy that he would have become a great solid ruler, let's say. And it's quite an addition to my collection. Now then we pass to Octavian, actually already Augustus at that point, as this coin comes from Philippi after the 27 BC, that is, at least after January the 16th, when he received the title of Augustus from the Roman Senate. Right, Philippi had historically been founded by the previously met Philip II of Macedon to control the neighboring gold mines in the route between Amphipolis and Neapolis. And I was told by my donor that essentially there were some leagues in the area historically that had associated themselves to exploit this mines and to mint some common currency that could give strength to their league on the market. The city had been founded properly with fortifications, colonists, and the mint at the time of Philip II. So when Mark Antony and Octavian defeat the Caesaricides, Marcus Junius Brutus and Cassius, at the Battle of Philippi that took place essentially west of the city in October 42 BC, they eventually released some of their veterans to colonize the city, which was essentially refounded as Colonia Victrix Philippensium, right? So the victorious colony of the Philippians. In 30 BC, Octavian, at that point sole ruler, because this is after Actium, but not Augustus yet, reorganized the colony with more Italian settlers, veterans, even possibly from the Praetorian Guard, that of course existed way before Tiberius, even though it's conventionally not thought of that like it, because it's mostly about the establishment of the 9 corps that we start considering as the Praetorian Guard, but the Praetorians are very old, right? Centuries old at this point, as bodyguards of the Roman magistrates. And on that second occasion, the city was renamed Colonia Julia Philippensis. So you realize that Octavian, puts there properly the Julia gentilis name after he had knocked out any other opponent, of course, and established a Julian monarchy in the empire. That would be confirmed, in fact, later. In fact, after January 27 BC, Philippi would take the name of Colonia Augusta Julia Philippensis, right? So even actually stressing not Philippensis, so to say, not of the Philippians, but of Philippi per se, right? As if properly there was a complete rule from his side, ideologically here, and the interesting aspect of this coin, which is also a bit of a mystery, is that as you can see, aside from the AUG in the obverse with the bare head of Octavian, it doesn't have any script further. Right on the reverse, you find two priests with yoke of two oxen plowing the pomerium, so the sacred boundary of the city. Thus, in this case, as the Romans did, they properly refounded or founded the new colony right from scratch, and so establishing this scale. And the coin refers, or at least it was minted in reference to the final renaming of the city, of the colony, without, in fact, any indication of Philippi per se, right? And I was asking the donor, if I remember correctly, it's, again, a bit of a mystery. We don't know, and it could be that at this point, maybe the leagues that were involved also with Philippi, as far as the minting of was concerned, maybe hadn't wanted to give particular importance to the city that had, and or having been refounded, there were other administrative things going on that, as you understand, even from the titling, wouldn't allow this city to have even much of an autonomy, or an outright kind of celebration of itself. It was really being managed by somebody else, like Octavian and whoever also was in charge of the administration, together with the local communities that perhaps had a saying in that regard, right? It's a bronze, of course. It weighs 4.8 grams. It is almost 2 centimeters in diameter, and it's just fantastic for all these coins to think that they literally come from the times and places that we are discussing, very often also in our videos for other reasons, and the also the symbology, this essential repetition of what Romulus had done with the same orbs in making essentially the entire world Rome, right, is fantastic, both with the symbolism of the pomerium being plowed, and as we know, the essentially the colonization with Roman citizens from Italy, and thus all that process that we well know. After, by the way, such a big event, militarily, politically, like the Battle of Philippi had been exactly, in fact, for the city. Then we pass to the last coin, and I'm said we're already finishing, but that's not the matter, because this is by far, at least the most mind-blowing for a specific iconographic historical reasons that we cannot sort out. So this is actually the last medieval. You would be surprised to hear, at least watching. See, you can see, of course, the Arabic script, but especially the head of the ruler. You would think this dates back maybe to some other time back in the early Middle Ages. There was something Romano-Arabic here. Here we're talking about 12th century Artuqid Mardin, right? Today is Turkey, but historically Syria. This is a coin from Qutb al-Din il-Ghazi II, ruling from the Anno Igire 572 to 580. That is Anno Domini 1176, 1184. Right, these are the same years we've seen in Byzantine history recently, in an area that was, as you understand, in between in fact, at this point not much the imperial boundaries anymore, because after Myriokephalon this had shrank again in the Anatolian hinterland, but still in an area that had received an important degree of Byzantine influence. right? But this does not explain what is depicted on the diagram, that is the head of essentially of a late Roman emperor. I don't know whether we know it's Constantine or Theodore. At least we're pretty sure that this is the exact iconography was used in late Roman times to depict properly the emperors on coins, and that is to be found here again on a 12th century dirham of an Islamic ruler that is technically not even part of the, as it could happen in a more frontier area, say of Romania, of the Rum, right? And albeit pretty close to it, and that's also a matter of approximation. As you know, for universal empires as a whole, consider this point the Seljuks, of course, were in crisis. The Sultanate of Rum per se is just immediately the consequence of the fragmentation of this incredibly extended Seljuk domain that in fact could not be directly controlled, and that for no apparent reason sees from this ruler Qutb al-Din Ilghazi II such representation. Now this guy is famous actually for, here I will not insert pictures, but for other coins that also represent a more 12th century like Byzantine art representations on his coins. We literally, however, no idea from any historical record or symbolism, whatever, why because he is apparently, I think the donor told me it's not completely unique if I'm not wrong, but it's pretty much like still an exception that confirms the rule, of course, that there is no such thing like an Islamic ruler this time to represent in fact a Roman emperor on his coins, and let alone with an iconography dating to late antiquity. So it's really a mystery that puzzles us per se, because either the guy was particularly fascinated with we laughed about this, collecting ancient coins like we do, or he was meaning something else. Here, actually, in the description that have been given through a link by the donor, it says that I can't read the text, but it basically speaks of the genealogy of Qutb al-Din Ilghazi II, right? So it could be that either he was claiming to descend from a Roman emperor, which is possible, because at the time we find it even later among the Ottomans, who had actually, in the time of the Sultanate of Rome, with some ancestors, had married into the Byzantine, probably the imperial line and such things. So they, in part, it wouldn't be strange for some rulers to make this up, but we're talking about like the time of the Komnenians or something like that, not at the time of Constantine, that nobody could track, by the way. So it would be made up, because we also doubt that they had in the 12th century like an accurate genealogy about such an alleged descendancy, and I don't think it's the case at all. But still claiming some sort of Roman legacy, right, from such a long time before, right, which again is somehow very historicistic, very romantic, like why dating back to the Constantinian era, right? Of course, Constantine was the guy, right? That from the other side, the Roman land was ruled by Constantinopolis, so it's pretty obvious that was the most powerful symbol. It's like in the West, everybody was dating back to Charlemagne, right? And also Constantine, by the way. But as the beginning of actual political history in some sense, right? So it was just a big symbology being used here. But if the genealogic data reference here is true, it may point properly at the will of this Artuqid ruler of Mardin, saying, I descend from this guy. I want to be pretended to descend from it. But the iconography is not definitive either, because again, normally these coins give you like, have some sort of series of styles. There is all a history of it. This guy in particular began to strike this money like on his own with such new customized thing, this novelty of placing a 4th century head, Roman imperial head on his coin, and his iconography of power, right? So again, quite powerful, quite interesting also, given that that the medieval iconography normally is much cruder in general, is on coins, than the ancient one. Here, evidently, they owned some older coin on the basis of which they modeled the portrait of the emperor. So it's even more fascinating, because it reveals, in any case, an historical interest within this milieu that is fascinating. On the other side, you see the name and titles of in fact, Aldin Ilgazi II in 5 lines, right? There's a bit of brown patina here, as you can say. It's a drachm, 33 millimeters in diameter, 13 grams in weight, and I think it's going to remain just like this, right? To be more complete, this coin was, I don't know where it was actually found. I don't even know exactly why it was struck in Martin. I think it's a specific, we can recognize the mint from some specific characteristics, but it possibly was found, or at least circulated, that we know with more with a certain degree of certainty, both in Anatolia and in the Al Jazeera, right? So straggling over this world that was in part even Roman, right? And of course, coins travels also pretty far away, and surely much more distant than this, hundreds of kilometers, and from Mesopotamia. So still at this point, the seat of the Caliphate, as it had been hegemonized, the Abbasid one has been hegemonized by the Seljuks. In any case, it remains pretty fascinating, and it blew my mind, because what the hell is this, right? And we can't answer the question so far. So it's one of those examples historically in which you just have to stay humble, because we don't know, right? It may seem also, of course, a relatively significant thing, because there was no major thing occurring with this Roman symbology apparently that we know anywhere around. So we can literally think of the taste of this ruler or someone within his court or milieu, or whoever was connected with minting. But generally speaking, it was the rulers who also gave green light and had the specific reason. This is so exceptional that surely must have been like a sort of personalized taste of some sort. So I arrived at the end of this. Not much, because I wouldn't like to keep discussing the gifts that again are amazing. So I thank enormously my donor and all the other donors who contribute in different ways. To all of you, I take it as always as a good chance to thank you for all your appreciation, your support, and I'm always glad to show you this, because it tells you, just feeling it in my head, what it is. History, these coins were literally there, were minted at the time, and you can simply just have them closer to you. And we all know, as historically interested people, let's put it in this way, how you can feel the spirit within these objects, and it's the meanings that lay in them, right, that really make them. And there is something really that you start feeling is sort of transcendental, of exciting, of spiritual, that at least have particularly impressed me from the first time I began to handle these ancient coins, especially knowing the history behind them, which is, of course, makes all more interesting than it already is. For today, however, I stopped here because I was saying, I wanted to say more, but these, aside from the fact that I don't have much other info because we literally don't know much else, aside from what is already my approximation, like I normally don't upload videos, like proper videos like this in motion that take a while to upload, so I just normally keep it shorter than the other videos. For today, I stop it here. Just hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it. Otherwise, leave a like or subscribe to my channel if you're interested in my upcoming content. For now, as always, I thank you heartily for listening to me. I thank you a lot for watching my videos. I wish you a nice time and see you next time. Bye.